Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Spinner model build. If you remember last time, I just kind of went over the kit, showed the photo etch, installed the photo etch pieces, mostly where they go, and I just laid the pieces out and I'm getting ready to paint them at this point. So we've got the pieces here unpainted, and I've taken them and I've gone and primed them first using Tamiya fine gray primer, and I've got them primed now with the primer, and I've also primed some of the photo etch pieces, and I'm using this wildflower blue Rust-Oleum paint. I don't particularly like to use these kind of paints on models because they go on thick and are hard to control. But you can see here it went on pretty nice, and the color is pretty close to the correct color. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the tape off these areas here where I drilled holes, which in hindsight I did not need to do because those smaller hole area there, these little pieces here are actually just like horns or something and don't need to have lights in them. So anyway, I've got those pieces here which go here. Again, no holes needed. There are no lights in those. But we do have our police lights here, the red and blue lights, which those go into these little grooved areas here in the front and here in the back. And those will have lights in there that will do some alternating flashing between red and blue. But to start with, I'm going to paint all these. I'm going to do the insides of them silver. And I'm going to drill out the holes of these police lights first to have those set up before I paint. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to use a small drill bit here. I think it's about a millimeter drill bit. Not positive, not sure. It's an 85 on the bit. But I've gone and I've drilled out the center holes on these lights. And I'm just going to put them into position here where they go on the body, and put the drill bit through those holes into the body so that I can drill into the body in the exact same position, which I've now done here. That way when I put the lights on, the holes will line up for the wires. And then I've got the rear lights here. These need to go in at a slight angle. I can't go straight through because there's a post here. The post does not even go into the model. It hangs out the bottom. So I'm going to have to drill it at an angle so that it comes out from this little piece that attaches here on the model. And then drilling at an angle, you can see how those posts hang out. Those are part of the exposed area. So going at an angle, which I've now done here, I've gone in at a slight angle and it comes out on the back side of the post, as you can see here, which should be covered up by the body of the model, and then it'll just go straight into a hole that I will drill into the model and come out back here. So for these little horns or whatever they are, I just put a little tape over the pieces where they glue into the model, so that it's not glue on top of paint. I'm doing the same thing here for the police lights with a little strip of tape. And I've gone and I've painted all of these with black primer paint. Gone and painted the inside of these horns with some silver Tamiya. And they've just fit on the back here, and here's where I'm drilling the hole through the light into the body of the model. And if I pull this back light off, you can see the holes there, and the wires will come in through, or rather behind those posts of the lights there that you see. So that should keep the wires completely concealed and hidden once this is glued into position. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and run my LEDs into the police lights. I'm using some cool white SMD LEDs. 0402 is the size. And I've got both of those in place, held in with a little bit of Elmer's glue. And I've glued my clear red and blue plastic covers over the lens, or the lenses rather, over the lights, and testing those out. They work just fine. So then it's just a matter of taking the wires from the LEDs and running them into the holes in the body that I've drilled out here. Now I'm going to go ahead and take both of those and run them and pull it through and position the police lights into place on the body of the car. And I've got those in place, and I'll just put some glue in there to hold them. And I've gone around and I've done all 4 lights around the underside body of the car. And I've also gone and glued these horns into position along the underside as well. Now I have these side pieces with these grills. I want to light these. The front one is here. I've gone and I've painted the grills black, and then these ones mount on the back here, and they should have light coming out of them. Problem is light escapes through this area here, so I need to deal with that. So because I want these to glow, I need to diffuse the light as well. So what I've done is I've taken some photo diffusion paper and glued it into position on the inside of the lower portion of the body. And those are the front grills there, or vents rather. And then I've glued some inside the rear ones here, as you can see. And then I'm going to use an LED here. This is just a test, but this is a 3mm LED I'm using just to test to show what it'll look like with light shining through with the diffused gel there. I've also cut out the entire rear portion. I'm going to use different LEDs, and it's just not going to work having a little pinhole like I had before. So this gives it more light and it shows a lot nicer. But you can see this big area leaking here. I've also painted the back side of that blue. And what I'll do is go ahead and glue these rear pieces into position here. And once I've got that placed, you can see the open area here. And I've cut out these little pieces of styrene here at an angle that will fit over that back portion. And then I went and painted them with the same color, wildflower blue. And now I've taken that little piece of styrene I have and I glued that into position in the back to block the light. And you can see on the inside I also put a little bit of putty around some of the edges so there's no light leak. And I've done it on both sides. You can see the putty right inside here. And there's still just the slightest bit of leak there, but I'll just take some of that wildflower blue and just touch that up with a paintbrush. And I've gone and done that and used a paintbrush, and when I turn the light on, you can see the light kick on from the reflection in the back, but there is no light leak anymore on this portion. And here's how it's going to look when it comes shining through the vent area. So I've also laid foil on the inside of the underbody, and this is to bounce the light around. I've installed some 0603 SMD LEDs, cool white, and I need to cover those up with the piece of styrene here. So I've just made like a little styrene shield so it goes directly into those vent areas. And then I've sealed it up with some putty around the edges for any light leaking. And then I've gone and painted it black so that no light shines through the styrene because it's so thin. And then if I kick the lights on, you can see the lights come on, but there's no light leaking anywhere on the inside. I've also built little styrene covers for the rear lights as well. And I'm going to cover those with tin foil. And I've gone and done that here. That way no light can be shining through those areas. And the lights are on currently, and there's just the slightest leak around some of that foil, but you can see the light coming out through the vents by my fingernails, the reflection on my fingernails there. And that's how it looks coming out the rear vent. So I've also gone and taken my wires and tried to keep them nice and neat and used some Elmer's glue, and I've run them down the center and glued them into place with some little spots of Elmer's glue. And at this point, probably should have done it earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and paint these areas in the back. I'm going to use Tamiya Sky Gray. Looking at an actual screen grab from the movie, it looks like it's a bluish gray, light gray. So I'm going to go ahead and airbrush this gray on to the areas on the underside here. And here we've got it all painted up with that sky gray. Then I'm going to take some Tamiya German gray and just do some washing to fill in the recessed areas and make them darker. I'm going to go ahead and do that over all 6 areas here. And then I'm going to go ahead and go around other areas on the underside and use my German gray and just do some washing to bring out some depth and detail. And I've gone around the whole underside here, and you can see how some of it's just popping now and it's looking a little more weathered, which it actually should look weathered, not super clean. So I've cut a little piece of a breadboard out here. This is going to be to power the side lights that come through those grills. I put some little styrene pieces on the bottom to support it and hold it up. And I've gone and I've glued that into position in the back area of the model here. You can see how that's secured. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solder my hots to the hot side and ground to the ground side. And this is again just going to power up the cool white SMD LEDs that come out the side grills. And I've got my grounds here and my hots here. Sorry if it's not a good solder job. But hooked up some alligator clips here, and you can see the lights coming on, and all 4 of them are powering up at the same time. I've also made another little board here, cut it out. Got some marker here. This is going to be for the blue lights. Those are for the red lights, for the alternating flashing lights. And then this down here will be for the hots of those lights. So I've soldered on all the hots for the red and blue lights. Again, this is the red. This is the blue. Those will be their grounds and alternate between the two. And I've finished securing all the wires down through the bottom center of the kit using some little spots of Elmer's glue here and there. And I've gone and I've soldered on the blue ground wires to the blue side. And I've also added this 3-wire cable here. I've got my red for hot, white will be the blue, yellow will be the red. And I've gone and I've also soldered on the grounds for the red LEDs to the red side, blue to the blue side. And again, these are all going to this new breakout cable that I have here, yellow, white, and red. So I've got that cable plugged in. I have it hooked up to some alligator clips here temporarily. And we fire it up, and this is just testing all of them together. No sequence running to flash, but just testing to make sure all the lights still work after being installed. So now we're going to move on to the top side. We've got the center dash here with these little things down the side here. These I need to shave off. I want to try to light those. They light up in the movie. I bought this side emitting fiber optic. I'm going to see if I can do it with this stuff. If I hook up an LED to it and put the fiber inside the LED, you can see how the fiber lights up and glows a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can use this on the outside of the dash. So these here glow yellow. I'm going to cut and shave those off. I'm going to go ahead and start with a blade here and shave off as much as I can with the blade. And then I'm going to continue on and sand it down with a little sanding stick here to get it nice and smooth. And I've got that whole dash portion completed. And then I've also cut off and sanded down that centerpiece there on the inside of the dash console. I've gone and I've primed the dash with Tamiya fine gray primer, and also have that photo etch piece there primed. And at this point, I had originally painted these other photo etch pieces blue, which I don't want. I want them black. So I've now gone and I've painted all of the photo etch pieces with my Army Painter black. And I'm going to use this micro crystal clear, and I'm going to use this to fill in the lights for the photo etch, these little lights here. So what I'm going to do with the micro crystal clear is it basically dries crystal clear and makes like a window. So I'm going to put a little bit of this crystal clear on the end of a paintbrush, and I'm just going to fill in this hole with the crystal clear, and it'll dry and basically make a clear window. And you can see both of the windows there, and they're both clear now. You can actually see through them and see the green on the other side. And I've also gone and I've used the crystal clear on the other side door light areas, and I've also used it on this whole center console here. It hasn't completely dried yet. You can see how it's still white, but then once it dries it becomes clear, and you can see through it and see how there's the green from my cutting board there. For this front dash portion, I'm only doing the little dots on the side, and you can see all of these are all filled in now with my micro crystal clear. At this point I'm going to use some colored clear Tamiya paints to paint the back side of those. So for example, on this dash here I'm going to do a yellow window here. The other one's going to be white, so it'll just have diffusion behind it, but it'll be white and yellow. And then I've gone and done all the other little buttons throughout the whole center console and on the dash, and I've just picked various colors, blue, green, yellow, red, and just kind of scattered them around a bit, and anything not painted will just come through white because of diffusion that I will put behind there for the light to shine through. So now it's time for me to start painting details on all these photo etch pieces, painting everything you see that's like the little raised areas and such. So I'm going to start on the center console here. I'm going to do some of these raised trim areas. I'm going to use some chrome silver, just bring those out, highlight them, make them stand out. And then I'm going to do some various grays around other areas of these photo etch pieces and just detail it up and break it up a bit. And you can see these are all painted here and how things are starting to pop and stand out. Looks like there's a little more to it than just some colored lights. So I have this photo diffusion paper here, and I'm going to use this to break up the light behind. There's some photo diffusion paper here, and I built a little box out of styrene and lined it with tin foil, and this is to light up the little side door lights. And here I've attached an 0603 SMD LED to a piece of styrene, which I'm just going to glue into place right here, and it'll light up inside that box of styrene. So I've glued that down, and I have all that tin foil around there to reflect the light around. And you can see when I turn it on, it's quite bright. So I've gone and I've painted all the outside of it black, and then this portion here I'll cover up still. But you can see the light coming through those little lights there. I've also made a little light box on the other side, some diffusion paper again, lined it all with some tin foil to bounce the light around. And here's how those look on the doors. And when they're lit up on both sides, it's looking pretty good, no light leaks. And I've gone through now and I've also painted some of the other details on the side door, the little wires there. So I've also put diffusion on the underside of the center console here and glued that into position. So when you look at the lights, they look like they're white, except for the ones which I've colored. And then I've glued a piece of styrene on the front here for light blocking. I'm going to put the light inside here. I've also put some diffusion on this upper portion for this other piece of photo etch back here. And then I've also lined the inside of this again like the other ones with some tin foil. This will just bounce the light all around and make it nice and even when it's lit up. And I have another piece of styrene that I've cut out here that will just fit over this back, and it'll block light and also bounce it around some more. And I've glued another 0603 SMD LED to this using some Elmer's glue. That's going to light up this area here. And then I will just take this piece and I will run the wires through this little hole that I drilled, and I'll glue this piece into position here with the LED there to light up that back portion. And I've got that glued into place, all secured and ready to go with the wires coming out here. I've glued another SMD LED to this piece of styrene, and this one I'm just going to glue into position on the underside here to light up the rest of the center console. And I've now got that glued into position here. So both of my LEDs are glued, and when I give them both some power, it lights up the center console and you've got what you see here. So moving on to the dash, I have those areas on the left and right there with some holes that I've used the microcrystal clear and some of my clear paints. And I've gone and I've just glued little teeny pieces of diffusion paper there so it'll break it up and make the other clear lights white. I've lined the inside of this again with tin foil like I've been doing with the rest of it to bounce all the light around. And it's time for me to figure out what I want to do here. I think for the center screen I'm going to use the purge screen, and for the dash I think I'm going to go ahead and use this one. Well, one of these two. I think I'm going to lean towards the one with the woman. And I've gone ahead and I've carefully cut this out with the blade. And then I've put a little bit of microcrystal clear on the inside of the photo etch, and I'm just going to stick this down on top of the crystal clear, and that will hold it in place like glue, but when it dries you won't notice it because of it being crystal clear. And I'm just going to move this around and get it centered up into position where I want it to be. And you can see that piece glued in there. And I've cut out another piece of styrene here, glued with some Elmer's glue, some tin foil to the bottom side, and this will be glued right here, and again create a little light box to light up that monitor for the dash. So doing a light test with an LED, turning it on, it's a bit hot and washed out to me, so I'm going to add a piece of diffusion. That looks a little bit better with some diffusion. I'm going to add a second piece of diffusion, and that looks much better now. And like the others, I glued a LED to the styrene, painted the outside of it black, the inside is lined with silver tin foil, and I turn it on, and there we have the monitor glowing. Lastly, I have these little control pieces that go on the front of the dash right here. And looking at the photo reference I have of the actual filming miniature, looks like they're black, but there's some blue trim, the same blue that's the color of the car around the outer edge. So first I've gone and primed these and then painted them with my wildflower blue. Then I've used some of my Viejo masking and masked off around the outer edge to retain the blue. And then I've given them a coat of Army Painter black primer. Then I just go ahead and peel off the Viejo latex mask. Then you have the pieces here just black and blue. And then I used a needle and I did some little buttons around there like the miniature, and then glued it into position on the front of the dash, and this is what we've got. I might do a little cleanup work on that. I'm a little rough around the edges, so I might clean that up. So we've got the dash up and running as a self-contained light box. We've got the center console all done, self-contained as a light box. We've got both side door lights working. We've also lined the inside of the underside, and we have that working with all of its lights. So I'm going to call this video done for the time being, and next time we will get into more of the intense lighting with the blinking lights and hopefully finishing up the top side. Don't know if it'll be finished next episode, but we'll see what we get done. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, if you like watching my videos, please feel free to give them a like. And so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, click subscribe.